This is an 8-iron, and it's a dead shank.
Wow.
Way right.
Oh, takes a hop
shank.
off the path.
You got to be kidding me. Very tough pitch shot right here. You got to hit it into the hill. One hop up and bite, and it's in.
Kind of like that.
Well, I would like to welcome recognized Golf Digest top teachers, friend of the brand, a friend of mine, and having Kyle Alderink on the Sub 70 podcast is an honor for the second time. Pro, thanks for doing it. A great time, I think, for us to talk since kind of even like for the whole nation, right? Like golf season post Masters is upon us, and this is, I think, always the time of the year where we're like, okay, how can we get better? And then that is where you come in. So this should be perfect of having your wisdom and your expertise to all help us play a little bit better this year.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I mean, it's always great to talk with you guys. And yeah, I mean, this is, golf's just been going crazy for a while. I mean, you know that better than anybody, but yeah, I mean, I think everybody's itching to get out, and yeah, so this will be fun.
I was going to talk to you about the Masters and the kind of run Scotty Scheffler's on, and just kind of from your lens of, because I know you do the mental side, you do the swing side. You're trying to make golfers the best they can be on the golf course and on top of mechanics and process and all that. But golf swing, right? Like, and you're seeing more of this where it's like the Adam Scott footwork, the traditional way of doing it. Bubba kind of started, but it's not your traditional kind of golf swing, right? It's working. I wouldn't change anything, but what do you see in Scotty's swing? And then we'll get in the mental side of what you're seeing with him a little bit. But what are you seeing in the swing of why he's such a great ball striker?
I mean, outside of the swing, honestly, I mean, I think confidence plays just a tremendous role in what you're doing. I mean, and, people might roll their eyes at that, but like, look, I mean, somebody who's not very confident can have the best swing in the world, and it's probably not going to play that well. And somebody who doesn't have maybe the best swing, I'm not saying he doesn't, but is extremely confident, is usually going to perform pretty well. And, the one thing I love about players like that I'm always fascinated with is, I'm sure somebody along the way tried to get into the ear and say, like, look, you got to change that. The long debate with like Jim Furyk, same thing. I mean, people come along with ideas and things, and then guys like this come and blow it out of the water. I mean, like, David Duval was number one in the world and, basically turned his head to the target. So, people hated that. So, like, when stuff comes around like that, I love that. And I think it just proves, like, there's not just one way to do it, and it's not what something looks like. And, I mean, it's not an easy move to replicate. I'm sure everybody's been out there and has tried to, slide the foot and have that kind of funky footwork and just to see what it's like. And it's not the most comfortable thing, at least when I try it. But, I'm that person, like, that's interesting. Let's try this. Let's test it. And, so, I mean, in terms of the swing stuff too, I mean, the guy just has incredible club face control, which it all really boils back down to, right? I mean, he knows what shot he wants to hit. He's very confident of that, and he can control the club face regardless of, what his feet are doing. So I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but I mean, to me, it's like, I love seeing kind of more of the untraditional stuff, and I love to see it break out like that because I think it helps this game evolve and say, like, look, like, it doesn't need to look a certain way. And I think a lot of junior golfers get trapped up in that. I know I've had a lot of conversations with people along the way of, they might be doing something a little untraditional and playing very, very well. And I remember even just kind of a short story, like a long time ago, I had this player who's extremely, extremely good. I mean, nationally ranked, and she had a very untraditional golf swing. It was kind of shut inside, but I mean, this girl could control the face, hit it where she wanted to, and score like crazy. And it's like, gosh, don't let anybody change that. Like, I kept pleading with her. I was like, don't let anybody change that. And she let people change it and ended up struggling. But, it's just one of those things, like, it's, sometimes you can swing your own swing, but there's a fine line where, you might be doing something, the average golfer might be doing something like that, hitting it awful. So it's like, as a coach, you're always looking at, when do you need to make changes and when do you just kind of nurture something like that? And Scotty, I think, is doing a great job of just being like, look, this is what I do. And, I don't know too many other people are going to do it like that.
Don't you think, too, it's kind of playing into the modern power game with that footwork? Like if you looked at long drive guys even 10 years ago, their footwork kind of did that to just clear, leverage all of it of hitting it hard, right? And then, like I said, Bubba comes along. It's different. You know who else used to do it back in the days? Kelkavecchia. He hit the shit out of it in the day, hitting a power fade, kind of like Scotty's preferred ball flight. And his right foot kind of, did the same sort of thing. So there's been guys who are doing it, but I wonder, too, is it just changing from just be an athlete, like, be athletic. I'm not athletic enough to make that move, right? Like, and I was always taught, like, at a young age, but, we didn't swing that hard at it in 19, I'm going to date myself, 84, 85, right? The ball spun too much, so you had quiet footwork, a nice little turn, right? Now these guys are just getting up there and just whacking the shit out of it. And the math proves that's the right way to do it. So is it also, do you think it's just, I guess my question is, being better athletes? And, like, who cares how it looks? If you can control the face through the zone, which he does a wonderful job, hit that thing hard, and let them go where they go.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you as an equipment guy could agree too. I think equipment plays a good role on it where you can go after a little harder without it, fear of going different directions. But I also think information is the biggest thing that's changed too. I mean, in the 80s, 90s, and when I was coming up as a junior golfer or a competitive golfer, I mean, we didn't have this information. I mean, we didn't have pressure plates and things like that to measure that stuff. It was all just, hey, this guy does it like this, and you try to copy that. But it just goes to show, like, swings and theories and things can evolve along the way. But, from what we know now and kind of something this has always made sense to me is just, really being kind of lighter on the feet and pushing off the balls of the feet and creating that kind of athletic move. I mean, no different than how a pitcher's going to throw, right? They're going to land on the foot and they're going to push off and you're going to see the foot kind of drive. I think there's a lot of that. I think we definitely know now that, the feet being stuck in the ground is not great for everybody.
Right.
Or not great for a lot of people, especially as you're trying to get more distance and be in there. And again, in terms of the athlete, I don't know if I'd agree with that. I mean, I think the players back in the day were probably just as good athletes. They just didn't know as much. They didn't really know what to be working on in a sense. And, I think Tiger definitely changed the game too when it came to working out and stuff like that. But I mean, I think the golfers of old and, older days, I think like Jack Nicklaus, I think was a hell of an athlete.
Yeah,
Arnold Palmer was probably a hell of an athlete. You know what I mean?
But you couldn't do that with the ball would just spin too much. I mean, there was a few guys, Arnold hit it hard, Norman hit it hard, but there's a lot of guys who look like they were, if you watch an Open championship from 1986, like Norman's the only one, there's very few that look like they're swinging as hard as Norman, right? Because I think the mishit was so punished that you couldn't use your athleticism like you can now. I guess that's more what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. That's what I was saying just a minute ago about, like, the equipment's made such a big difference.
And the ball.
Right?
Ball especially.
The ball. My goodness, I know. I mean, it's like, dude, I hit it 300 still, in my 40s. And, I was hitting it maybe my best 260 in college with the Callaway Steelhead driver.
I'm longer at 51. There's no question, right? I'm longer at 51 than I was at 21.
Yeah, and I can get up there and just kind of swing as hard as I want, and the ball's pretty much staying on the planet.
Right, and that's what's changed.
It's different.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's definitely involved in how players can swing and being able to get into that power stuff. Because like you said, back in my earlier days, if I would have done that, I still have haunting memories of snap hooks and
me too.
Stuff like that, especially under pressure. I remember a couple tournaments very vividly where coming down the stretch and I was just learning to be in those situations and, amped up, adrenaline pumping, I'd go after it and then the thing would rope hook off the planet.
Well, and remember to get reduce spin off of the, I'm talking, I played, drivers in college in the early 90s that were 185 cc's probably, right? Like, and you had to hit sling and hooks to get spin off of it, right? So it was like a millimeter away from pure terror of an OB snap hook left. And it didn't take much if you were amped up or trying to go after one, right? Like the timing had to be really good to hit a 15-yard draw with it or a power draw. Oh God, man! Like I don't have those fears at all anymore of standing over there with a driver. And like a lot of us anymore, we just play a little fade, so you can just body release it as hard as you can. Just let it, it still doesn't spin, so you can just hold it off and let it fade to the right 5 yards without that fear of it. You don't have to hook it anymore to get the spin off. That's a huge factor, at least in my mind.
The fact that you can hit these power cuts and like these low spinning fades is just unreal to me. I mean, it still blows my mind that it can be done.
I'm going to be like sitting there tonight when I'm ready to go to bed and thinking about the terror of a dog leg left with OB left, trying to rope hook a driver that small to get some distance. And oh God, man, I'm with you. It was terrifying. The kids these days, right? Like, well, I sound like an old man. Like they don't have any idea what it was like of how close it was to hitting a ball off the planet as a good player. Like it did not take much.
I mean, Jason, I do this on a daily basis. It makes me feel so old, but I tell these kids. I mean, back in my day, you had no idea what it was like, and you get to have so easy. Because that's mainly what I work with in person. It's like high school kids and college kids and stuff like that. And I'm always kind of giving them crap. I was like, back in the day, I'm hitting 5-irons into greens, and you're hitting wedges.
Yeah.
I'm this bitter guy about it.
5-iron from 175, like hit well.
Yeah.
Yeah. You go
but
grab.
It's real though. I mean, I think about like even my college days. I mean, I'm hitting a lot of 7-irons and stuff into greens, and and people wonder why we weren't shooting 20 under in tournaments back then. It's like, look, man, it's a different game when the ball's spinning much more. You're hitting 7-irons, 6-irons into greens. Like, a 200-yard par 3 was like,
that was
man,
a beast.
You're frightened over those things.
That was a 3-iron for me in college, right? That was a full
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Armour 845 3-iron, to get that there. Oh, yeah, different beast, man. Yeah, well, keep telling the kids you guys don't have any idea what it used to be like, and that the wind would blow harder and it was colder and all the rest of the stuff too.
Yeah.
I know you work on the mental side too, and you mentioned that with Scotty, and then what you're seeing, and I from talking to a bunch of friends of mine who play the tour and stuff like that as well. Like, I know it sounds like a cliche, but confidence builds confidence, right? And all of a sudden, when you start pulling off these big wins, and you keep doing it and you find yourself in the position and you're succeeding. I always think it's two parts. A, the anxiety goes down and you start believing in yourself. And then also, two, he's getting a little bit, in my opinion, where the rest of the field knows he's not going to spit the bit. He knows he's not going to spit the bit, so they have to push, right? Because he's not coming back to the field. He's getting there, or he is there already with that. And that's a huge advantage. Like Tiger had it. Duvall probably had that for that period of time when he was healthy. You get on these runs, and I think it also makes the other guys potentially make more mistakes as they know he's not going to shoot 2 over on the back. It's just not happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you assess his? Do you think, like you were saying from the start, it's as much mental as it is how well he controls the golf swing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a lot talent-wise that sets players apart out there, to be very honest. And this is conversations I've had with PGA Tour players and LPGA Tour players, and then the players trying to come up. I mean, look, it's very different if you're playing to keep your card, keep your livelihood, to earn money for all the travel expenses. When you're sitting with millions and millions and millions of dollars and you've won a few times, or a bunch of times, it's a whole different world. You have nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm. You're free.
I mean, you're free. You have nothing to lose. I mean, the only thing he's got to lose at that point is maybe some critics talking a little trash about him, or just the pride of like, hey, I blew a tournament. But I mean, there's nothing really to lose. He's set financially. He's won a bunch. You know what I mean? So he's at a state mentally there that's just so different than a guy that needs to win to get, maybe into the Masters, or a guy that, needs to make the cut to keep his livelihood, to actually earn money and pay expenses. Like, those are totally different mental spots to be in, but you can stand them right next to each other and they probably are going to do the same stuff. I don't know if there's a shot that Scotty can hit that nobody else can hit. I don't know if there's a putt that he can make that nobody else can make out there. But when you get to that level and you start doing that stuff, I mean, one, you start getting that stigma like, oh, you're really good. And then you got to be strong mentally to uphold that too, right? Because you could easily be like, well, man, everybody's put me on this pedestal. What if I don't keep up? But, and if it's me, and this is just me saying, if I were there, I'd be like, dude, I got all the money in the world. Like, who cares? I'm going balls out here.
Yeah, there'd be a freedom to it, right? There versus, like I said, you want pressure. I always, watch the final round of Q School or something. Trying to get a card. That's pressure. There's pressure here, but you're correct. It's a different kind of pressure, right? I mean,
it's more of a pride at that point.
Yeah, and you should win. He's in position. Right. You don't want to be the guy who can't get over the finish line at that point. It's probably not going to change his life at all. He's already a major champion. Like I said, he's financially set. Where if a guy gets a PGA Tour card and $500,000 in his bank account to start the year off with, that's life-changing for some guys' career. So it is it's pressure, but it's a different way. Boy, he seems to be handling it, though, well. Or embracing greatness, maybe? Would that be a way to kind of say it? Like he's comfortable winning. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a big piece of it, too, is self-image is a big piece. Talk a lot about the mental game is, what do you believe about yourself? Do you believe that you are that good and meant to be that good? Or, are you just waiting till you kind of mess up? And there's a lot of people there, again, with that amount of skill that can get into those situations and are just kind of waiting to, for something to go wrong. I'm not good enough to be in this situation. And that's a big, big differentiator. I mean, essentially the self-image is kind of what you're going to do. So like that player that, will have a really good front nine and is sitting on the 10th tee going, well, here I go again. I'm going to blow it. I had a really good front nine, so the back nine's got to be crappy type thing.
Right.
Versus the one that's like, can truly say, let's keep it going. And, on the mental side, a lot of people will just be like, well, just, it's another shot or something like that. But when those thoughts are kind of built in there like that, I mean, it's most likely going to come to fruition. It takes a lot of conditioning to change the self-image. And somebody like Scotty is probably pretty cocky. And knowing people who know him, he's pretty cocky. I mean, he's very humble, and he's a man of faith, and, he has a lot of belief in that. But, I mean, he's also, like all greats are, like Tom Brady, like Michael Jordan. I mean, he's pretty damn cocky.
Right. You need to be.
You
better
need to
have
be.
that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got to have that, right? I mean, I've never seen an incredible athlete of any sport that isn't just, like, going to tell you how good they are. And it's interesting because most people frown upon that, but it's like, look, I mean, there's that whole self-belief thing is really going to make the difference at that level because talent is really not separating many people at that level.
I agree. And the pros I know have been on tour for a long time are very successful. They are not lacking self-belief. I'll tell you that. Right? And that's why they were out there forever, and that's why they've won multiple times, right? Like they're not lacking self-belief. They want that shot on the 18th hole with all the pressure. They yearn for that. They want to be in that position, right? That's why they put the work in. That's why they've done what they've done.
You can go down and watch a Corn Ferry event, and you watch every single player out there, and you're like, every one of these guys should be able to compete on the PGA Tour. What's really separating them, and a lot of times it's the guys who are just missing, or the girls are just missing by a shot or two, and it just crushes them.
Right.
And then it kind of constantly happens. You might miss Q School by a shot or two, and then you're just crushed, and you miss a qualifier by a shot or two, where you might play it, you might get in, and then all of a sudden have a couple of good finishes, and all that pressure's off, and then boom, you're going crazy.
Yeah. No, he's on an interesting run. Well, for us mere mortals, not winning Masters, like I said, it's that time of the year. I know, like, you have an approach that you kind of have a holistic, and tell me if I'm explaining it wrong, but from the outside, like, you're doing like a 360 view of this, from the mental side to short game to long game. Like, you're trying to make people play better on the golf course and shoot better scores. And how did you come up with the program? How do you, like, as a teaching professional, look at that? And, I know you're reaching a lot of people, outside of the Chattanooga area where you live. And, like, how did you come to to doing what you're doing now and the experience that you have in and trying to make it work from that standpoint than just focusing on, I mean, use a generic term, your swing plane?
Well, I mean, I'll be very honest. When I first started as a coach, I mean, that's what I did, and I went all in on it. It was just, essentially making swings look good. I really enjoyed, like, the problem solving, like standing with their video and solving problems, and I thought that was the way it was. I mean, that's kind of what I knew growing up, and, people would be happy in sessions, but then, I kept kind of being like, well, hey, how you scoring in the course? And I wasn't hearing a lot of change, but it was like, hey, I'm hitting it better. I was like, okay, cool. But, at the end of the day, aren't we supposed to be scoring better? And I remember sitting into a seminar when I was kind of a younger teacher, and I was talking with Todd Anderson. I'm not sure if you know who that is or not, but pretty renowned coach and very respected in the industry. And I remember him posing a question and just saying, like, look, if you were paid on the amount of shots that people dropped off their score, would you change your approach? And I was like, it's one of those questions that just really makes you, like, kind of think about the way you're doing things. And at some point you're kind of like, yeah, what am I doing? Like, if the goal is to get people to play better golf, I mean, at the end of the day, that's scoring better, right? I mean, there's still a handful of people that are like, hey, I just want to work on my swing and hit it better. I'm scoring okay, but I was just not striking it like that great, and it's not as fun. But at the end of the day, I mean, everybody's trying to score better. Like, that's more fun, is to lower scores, to beat your personal best. And I'm like, okay, well, now I got to start looking at, like, what's essentially the easiest and fastest way to do it? Because essentially most amateur golfers, they don't have time to go out and practice every day. If they have time, they want to essentially play golf if they can, or if they have limited time, then they're going to go to the range. I'm like, okay, so, like, what's the kind of path to do this? And essentially what I found, and some people still get upset with me when I say this, but I think players work on their swings way too much. And I think they work on stuff into a point where they essentially just confuse themselves, or it's unnecessary. And so I started looking at them like, okay, well, what if I can get players to work on their swing less, spend maybe 10 minutes a day on it, and then move on to things like that, like not three-putting, like getting up and down a little more around the green, like getting more distance off the tee so they're hitting shorter clubs in there. Like, now we're starting to look at, okay, now we got these things. And again, what if they can just strategize the course a little better? What if they're just on different sides of the tee box, and that opens up all this room? Now they're not in bunkers, they're on side of the fairway. So I'm looking at all these things like, okay, what can people do? What can people do quickly, and what's going to get them there? And that's essentially how kind of my program and how I coach has come to fruition, because it's the same thing. Even with the elite players that I'm coaching, I see them all the time just get stuck on the range and are sitting there for hours working on their swing and not accomplishing anything. And most time they just either wear themselves out, or they just confuse themselves and end up getting them into a position to hit it bad. I mean, my friend Brady Riggs, who's a legendary coach too, said one time to me, he said, like, the range is where games go to die. And I don't know if I could agree with him any more than that.
Well, I remember one time I was at a Champions Tour event, and this is like no dig on this player because he was really good for a long period of time. But I was watching Esteban Toledo, right? And he's hitting like the most beautiful, like, 5-irons with like a 2-foot apex draw. But the dude did it for like 45 minutes. And I'm like, what's the point? Like, dude, you're flushing it every single time. Like, I don't know, based on the club head speed that man has, and on the Champions Tour, like, I don't know how you hit a 5-iron any better, right? It was perfect. It was and I'm thinking, man, if I hit five in a row like that, I would put the club down and go work on my short game and chipping and putting from 100 yards and in. Because his swing looked really good, right? Like, okay, check. I think like David Duval was famous for that, of like not overbeating golf balls. He only went there if he had to work on something. If not, he was not going to go out there and hit 7-irons to death.
Right.
So there are some players that like seem to go to the range. There's some players that seem to just work on their golf game. But it's interesting that was his quote of like, you think some guys can truly overdo the driving range and, I'm guessing, forget about the other parts of the game that helps you get the ball in the hole and score better.
Oh, I mean, I see it on a daily basis, right? So, I mean, I'm at a country club, so I'm seeing, I get to witness a lot of times in my downtime, I just watch I watch how our club is probably, our mean age is probably, I would say 45 to 60. That's probably the majority of the guys out there. And we're heavily male club, but so I watch these guys come in. And then I even talk to them too, just because I'm always curious to see what people are thinking of. And most people are going up there fresh off a YouTube tip, and they're trying to do something. And I'll even ask them, like, why? I just ask people why. Like, why are you doing that? How's that going to help? And nobody really can ever answer that. And I look at practice, like, anytime I spend, and I'm especially at a stage in my life where I just have zero time to waste. So anytime I spend, like, I'm solving a problem. Like, I want to know what my feel is to hit this shot that I need to hit. I would like to start the ball left and fade. If I can't do that, then I'm going to work on, a swing drill to do that or a path drill to do that. And then from there, I want to solve, like, how am I thinking about that over the ball? Like, what's a simple feel I could have or a visual? Like, I need to know those things so I'm prepared when I go out there. That's all I'm doing is I'm preparing. So I go, if I do A, then B is going to happen. And most people are in there and kind of going through the Rolodex of swing thoughts. And, I'll hear these guys and they'll talk to each other about it too. And, one time they're like, well, this swing, I'm trying to get my weight over here. And the next swing, I'm trying to drop the club. And then I'm like, okay, so when you go to the first tee, what are you going to do?
Yeah, you better have that cleared out of your mind at that point. Maybe one swing thought, maybe one. That'd be about it. Otherwise, I'd like just visual the ball flight of how is it going right to left or left to right.
Yeah, but most people don't do that, right? Most people have 10 different swing thoughts in practice. So I always say, like, most of the time players are training themselves to be inconsistent because they go out there and they work on different swing thoughts and they're training themselves to bounce around swing thoughts every couple swings. So they go up to the first tee, maybe they hit a good one, but as soon as that bad shot comes and then another bad shot comes, and then it's like, what? Now what? So now it starts to go down the Rolodex of swing thoughts, and that one doesn't work. Now they're just getting frustrated. And then everybody knows this one. Then they'll go back to the range. They'll hit it great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's like they're never really just defining what is it that we do well. And when you really know that, like for me, I need 5 minutes, Jason. And I'm not saying I'm a great golfer anymore, but I know I can get the ball flight moving, where I need to. Like, I just need to check, like, is the club a little outside on the backswing so I can just cut across it a little, hit my fade. If I can't do that, I'm going to throw a stick out in the way. I'm going to do that for 5 minutes. As soon as I have that feel, I'm good.
Right.
Like, what else? Why do I need to be out there the rest of the time? From there, I'm just making sure I'm rolling my ball straight off the putter face. I'm making sure, I'm hitting my trajectories on my wedge shot. Once that stuff's prepared, like, where the magic is happening is on the course. So if I were really, getting back into competition, I haven't competed in years, and I play like twice a year at this point. But, if I were like, hey, I'm going to go play in a tournament, I really got to prepare. I would be spending 90% of my time on the course, like really just pinning down my thought processes. I would be pinning down my alignment, making sure my grip's staying in the good spot. And just going through those things, like, am I really controlling the ball flight? And do I have my mind in the right spot where I know exactly where my focus is over? Like you said, is that a visual? Is it a feel? Like, I need all that stuff defined. I need my yardages down, and I need to make sure I'm just making putts, essentially, and I'm good around the greens. If my yardages are good, I know my swing thoughts in the right spot to produce the ball flight, and I really feel in control of that. Like, for example, I'll give you one. Like, for me, because I've always had a tendency to, like, kind of slide off the ball. Like, I always feel like my weight stays on my left foot. It doesn't, but when I feel anchored on my left foot, I hit it great. Like, I got that. I'm in control of that. I know if I do that, I'm going to hit good shots. So I just double check that, making sure that's producing my little cut swing, and then I'm good.
If when you're saying you're watching these guys play, and so like somebody listening to the podcast, give me 2 or 3 things at the start of the year that is like the easiest fixes that you've seen over the years. It works. You can, more than not, somebody might be doing, especially being like, we haven't touched it. We're just starting to play. It's still cold here in Illinois. A lot of the country, it's still, we're just barely kind of getting some rounds in us, right? And it's a lot of rust, and, you don't play a whole lot from, middle of November to the middle of April. So you're knocking rust off. What do you see that can really, out of the gate, help people? If it's a mental tip, if it's short game, if it's long game, like what's a few things you would focus on out of the gate?
Grip setup pivot, for one.
All right, walk me through that.
Yeah, so I mean, most issues are coming from just the grip and just where the setup is. Particularly, if the feet are all crooked and if the weight's sitting too far back on the heels, which is very, very common in amateurs. So spine will be too upright, weight's back on the heels, and then couple that with like a grip that's off. So many swing issues are coming from there. But yet everybody wants to advance to, swing pass, swing plane, and working on things that will truly never change if we're not in a spot to truly be able to do that.
Before the golf swing even starts, we're saying, right? We're saying just setup. Really good athletic setup.
95% of stuff is coming from there.
Right.
I mean, like 95% of stuff. But people work so much on, the swing portion before even getting to the root cause. So, like, for example, if my feet are kind of flared and I'm sitting back on my heels, like, you pretty much just locked your whole body up. Like, you're not going to pivot very well. So now we're going to start to see sliding, and we're going to see probably over-the-top swings, or we're going to see a lot of sliding into the ball and dropping it too far under. And primarily just because you're not standing in a spot to truly let your body work and be able to move.
And then throw the golf hump in there a little bit too, and the spine angle has to pop up because can't rotate out of the way.
Well, yeah, I mean, so again, anytime your weight's on your heels, it's going to the toes. Like, that's a good thing for people to know. Like, if your weight's sitting on your heels, you can't pivot off your heels, you can't jump off your heels, you have no power off your heels. So if you're standing on your heels, for the most part, your weight's going forward. So, yes, humping it, spine popping up.
Yep.
So that's either going to cause dropping it under or over the top, depending on what the player's pattern is. But so step one, I mean, for most time, I'm just getting people into a setup and on the balls of the feet, getting light on the heels, and a grip in a spot where they can move it. But, the grip feels awkward to change. Like, we all know that. But people just don't want to do it, man. The club face might be really jacked up and it'll be like, hey, let's slide the grip over a little. It's going to feel awkward for a while, but most people are just like, oh, it feels so weird. Now I can't hit it. But, I mean, if you really stick to a grip change for a day, it feels so much better because there's so much sensory in the fingertips that it feels so awkward at first. But, I mean, you take your hands off the club and you re-grip it. And you just do that over and over. I mean, after 20 minutes, it feels fine. It starts to feel normal. But it's like people just kind of mentally go.
Do you like those training grips that have the hands
Love
in the right? Okay. So that would be a great, if you're struggling, use those things, right?
100%. Yeah. Because, I mean, it's just like, to me, it's such a silly reason to hit bad shots is to have your hands in a bad position. You know what I mean?
Well, I see a lot of weak golf grips, especially with the left hand. And explain to people listening, I don't mean weak of how firm you're holding onto it, but the V going over, if you're right-handed, like going over your left shoulder. Club face way open. I see that like a very common, sometimes not the right hand as much, but man, people naturally want to grip a golf club, especially if they're just starting off or a little higher handicap. That the left hand is not in a position, if you're a right-handed golfer, to kind of close that club face down and get some power on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I see like a correlation, and this is just kind of my own stuff. I don't know if I have anything to back this up, but I see a correlation between age. I typically see the older the player, the weaker the grip. The younger the player, the stronger the grip. Like almost every kid I see under like 14 years old has a strong grip. Like I never see a weak grip.
That is true.
As players get older and older, I see those hands start to fly over. So I typically see a lot of golfers 60 and above have the weaker grip and really rotate the face open.
Yeah. So we got grip. So we got stance. We got to get the hands in the right position for this to work. And what's the third thing you were kind of saying? Hey, out of the gate, let's check some fundamentals here.
Yeah. So your pivot. So how you turn is basically controlling everything. I mean, it controls where the club's going to swing. It controls like the direction, the path, and it's going to control, do you have any space to the swing? So I look at it like probably the simplest way to think about a golf swing. Like if your arms have space, you're probably doing pretty good. Like every swing fault like I've ever seen in my life has to do with when the trail arm kind of gets close to the body and either again goes away from the body and back in, so like over the top. They'll have to like throw it over and the arms pull back into the body, or the right elbow gets stuck on the downswing and has to kind of flip around the body on the follow through. So most issues are coming from the arms getting jammed up. Like when you see players like again, on that professional level, I mean, you're always seeing a lot of space from arms to body through impact. So I look at, like, when we can create a pivot and we can turn our lower body and stay centered for the most part, we can start to create room for the arms to swing. So, for example, like if a player slides, like let's say they're a right-handed golfer and their hip slides out to the right in the backswing, it bends the spine towards the target. So if that happens, now the arms are automatically going to swing over the top just because of the direction the spine is, and then that's always going to pull the arms back into the body because you've essentially lost all your space.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense to you or if you can visualize that.
I can, yes, but yeah, that makes sense, right? And then, and in that position, that's the only way to get, if that happens to the player of what you're saying, that's the only way they can kind of get the arms back in front of their body again.
Yeah, because your arms are always going to seek space. They're not going to physically run into your body on purpose. Like, they're going to try to go somewhere. So, like, a player that slides their hips from the downswing and essentially bends their spine back, so they're swinging, too end out or too shallow, they typically get their arms too stuck to the right side coming in, and then their arms have to flip around, which causes, again, that closed space hook type thing. So in terms of the pivot, I'm trying to see, like, can essentially we keep your sternum and belt buckle as close to the center as possible throughout the swing so you're controlling your spine. Because where your spine bends is where the club's going to go. If your spine stays relatively straight, like, you're going to have a relatively good path. If it bends away from the target, you're going to swing to inside out. If you bend it at the target, you're going to swing over the top. So, again, I look at, players that spend a lot of time working on their path, but they're not really controlling the things that, that are really controlling that.
Right.
And they're not working on the things that are really controlling
A leads to B. If A is bad, then there's I don't care what you want to do with your path, it's not going to happen, right? It's not going to look like Adam Scott's path where it slightly goes under it going down with, right? If you just think of like a classic swinger, in my mind, I want to be in that position. But if what you're describing of the tilt happens, that alone is enough to kill any relevance or anything being close, even though I'll never swing like Adam Scott, to have that same sort of, we can say, the matching the path up even, or close to what Adam Scott does, right? If A happens, I can't get there.
Yeah, so, I'll give you a good example. I had a guy that's probably mid-50s, we'll say, come for a session the other day. And, he was kind of going, I asked him, what he wanted to accomplish, and he was going down his Rolodex of essentially like tour swings that he wanted to mimic. He's like, I really want to shallow the club. I want to have the kind of Brooks Koepka or Dustin Johnson bow wrist at the top. And he was going through all these things.
You better be athletic to get out of the way of that one.
Well, first I was like, why? Yeah, at first I was like, why do you want to do that? Always a little bit of a warning sign, and I just kind of said it, like, I didn't mean to be a dick about it, but I was kind of being a dick about it.
Yeah.
Like, so you just want to look better, is what you're saying. And he was like, well, I guess. But, he's like, I've spent, I think what he told me is he's been spending the last year working to shallow the club, and he was still very steep, and it was just kind of what I told you. He's like, I've worked on drills, I've done some lessons, and I still can't stop this over the top. But he was essentially, his posture was off. His hips were way back. He was very tilted. And then when he went back, he just had a lot of right hip push out. So it kind of bent that spine like we're talking about. And then he would just, from there, he had no choice to go that direction, to go over the top. And I just explained that to him. So we got him, a little taller, got his hips over his heels a little more in setup. And I just helped him feel how to work his right hip in, created all this space. And then he was swinging the club way almost too much at that point. He started hooking the ball, and he's like, "Wow, he's like, that was 15 minutes, and I haven't been able to do that in a year. That's crazy."
But don't worry about the John Rahm or the DJ move, right? Right? Like some guys. I'm just thinking, like, I'm probably going out on a tangent here, but you and I both know how athletic you have to be to have that club shut like that, and still be able to hit a hard fade from that position. I can't get out of the way quick enough of it, right? My body doesn't move quick enough to hold that off.
Tough, man.
Oh, yeah. That's a really athletic guy's golf swing, right? To be able to have it that bowed and then just be able to bring that back in front of you. Like, that would not be a golf swing for a 55-year-old amateur. I would say, let's go and try to work on this.
Yeah, I mean, and I just kind of try to ask you. I was like, hey, do you want to hook the ball? It's like, because essentially the speed of your body, like if you want, I mean, I can show you how to close it like that, but you're going to hook the hell out of it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. To hit a fade from that position really takes some athletic talent, right? And because those guys are hitting fades from that position, not hooks.
Yeah. I mean, if it makes anybody feel better, I mean, I worked with a guy essentially on the mental game who was playing professionally and was trying to go to Q school, and an incredible player, but he had a swing coach that was trying to get him to do that. I mean, this is a professional athlete. I mean, he was the workout twice a day type guy, chiseled, and he was trying to learn how to hit that shut face cut, and I mean, he couldn't do it. He just could not do it.
Was he hitting it left, I'm guessing?
Yeah, he was a lefty.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, he was hitting hooks with it, unfortunately, I'm guessing.
Yeah, he hooked it and pushed it, and he just could not get that right, and it unfortunately cost him a little bit. But and that's the other point too. I'm like, at some point, like, it's not mental, but at some point it is. I mean, in terms of getting into the mental side, it's like, look, if you're awesome on the range consistently, day in and day out, then it's probably a mental thing.
Right.
If you can't hit it very well on the range, it's probably not a mental thing.
Right. There's something going on. So we got the grip, right? And then we got that part, and we're getting our posture more athletic. Is there one other, we need to get some space, and we, like you're talking about, is there one kind of simple drill that you would, the people listening to, like, this is simple and it will give you space, and I'm telling you it works. Is there one for that like we got on the other ones?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I really like, I'll give you two versions of it, but both of them are meant to help players learn how to essentially turn and place better. The first one is if you take like a stick or a club and you put it parallel with your feet, right between your stance. So essentially it would be like a ball position stick.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So it's going right between your stance, kind of parallel to your feet. And all you're going to do there is practice trying to turn back and keep the seams of your shirt or the seams of your pants essentially over top of that stick.
Okay.
Or your belt buckle is another way to look at it too.
Yep.
But what I like to kind of focus on that torso core area. So I'm like really turning that side, and I'm trying to get the seam of my shirt to be right over top of that stick. So if I slide, it's never going to get there.
Yes. Right.
So in a way to kind of visually do that, if you just hold a club right against your stomach, I hold it kind of against our two hands, so it's essentially running parallel to your shoulders now.
Yep.
I'm just going to turn that to 90 degrees over that stick.
Yep.
So again, if we're sliding, you're never going to get that amount of turn.
If we're turning, you'll see it turn.
If you're turning, you'll see a turn, and then, like, for example, let's say I kind of move my whole body too far away from the target. Like, now you're going to see that your club is way away from the stick. You moved way over it.
Correct.
Or if you're like really leaning towards the target on the backswing, again, you're going to see it really crooked. So I just like to use that alignment stick to really try to turn over top of it on the backswing, turn over top of it on the follow through. So it really helps everything stay in a very centered manner. Now I realize not everyone's going to be able to stay perfectly centered, but it gives you a little feedback on it, which is important, because most people have really good intentions of what they're trying to do, but they don't really have any feedback. So they might think they're doing something, but not be doing it.
Right.
And this is also another reason why a lot of players can go down rabbit holes on the range, because let's say they're working on a simple turn drill like that. Let's say we worked on staying centered, but they don't really know if they're doing it. And they try for 4 or 5 shots and they just hit awful. They might not be doing it, but
right.
They think they're doing it.
But that visual will give you if you're doing it or not, right? I can picture from that drill, you're going to know.
Yeah, but I'm saying if you don't have that, though, this
right.
is what throws a lot of players off, and they think they're doing it right, but they're hitting it bad. Now they're linking, well, this doesn't work, so now I got to try something else. I mean, this is what happens to players on the range. Like, this doesn't work. You know what I mean? So it's hard for them to associate because they think they're doing the turn right, but they're not doing the turn right.
And what's the second drill you got?
So the second one is heels up. So essentially you're going to point your toes kind of straight away, lift your heels slightly off the ground, and then your goal is to essentially make golf swing staying balanced on the balls of the feet. So you can't fall over, You can't fall on your heels. You have to truly just turn back and turn through, keeping pressure on the balls of the feet. That's a really good warm-up drill because it fires the legs up and gets the hips really moving. But essentially, players are going to really start to see very quickly, like, how much their lower body is moving around, whether it's heel to toe or side to side and things like that. So I really use that heels up drill with everybody I coach as either a warm-up drill or just a pure pivot drill, just to learn how to stay essentially balanced and turn and balance like that.
Yeah, because you can't fake that one.
Can't fake that one, but what's cool is a lot of players start really understanding how to push off the ground when they start getting more in tune to how to use the balls of the feet. Because that's really where we're pushing off of and getting pressure off of. So, like, if you're going to go and just jump as high as you can, the first thing you do is you get down on the balls of the feet.
Right.
If you're going to throw something, you land on the ball of the foot. Like, that's where the part of the foot where our pressure is really meant to be placed. And when we're on the ball of the foot, it actually unlocks the ankle, which helps the whole essentially system or body turn better. So players start to really feel like, holy cow, now my ankles and shins and everything kind of starts to unlock, and it frees up the body to turn.
Athletic. You're being an athlete then at that point.
Being an athlete. So most people that are struggling with turn are the people who are sitting back on their heels and their feet are kind of flared out. And even though, we've been told for years, like, flare your feet, it helps you turn, it actually doesn't. It just locks up your whole body. And people are doing weird stuff to kind of get out of the way, which is like just either leaning the hips back or swiveling the hips or something like that.
Gotcha. Well, it's great advice. Like I said, we're all going to be working on fundamentals at the start of the year. If somebody wants to work with you, what's the best place for them to reach out, find you? I know you're doing some online stuff too. Like, what's the best way for people to reach in on what platforms?
Yeah, so I just launched. I'm kind of in a beta testing right now. So any of your listeners that want to join and kind of help me make this program awesome, but it's my 10x Better Golf program, and it's cool because I have all my online courses are built in there, but I have a real guided journey for players to come in. So when they sign up, they get access to this community, and they can follow these steps to kind of know I've laid out. This is something I've refined for probably 15 years, but what we were talking about earlier is kind of helping players understand where they are in the journey to cut their handicap in half. That's my goal usually with everybody. I want to cut your handicap in half. So I want to show players when they come in, they can kind of find where they are in this journey or these milestones and say, okay, this is where I'm at in this. And then this is essentially what I need to be progressing on, whether that is how you're practicing, whether that is the swing stuff. I have essentially material courses in place for, everything somebody needs in there, but it's not just like, here's 1,000 videos, go figure it out. It's very hyper specific to where the player is in their journey and how to get them to cut that handicap or that score, way down. And I have a community baked into it too. So I'm in there daily answering questions, and in the premium version of it, they can get onto my OnForm app and actually get personalized swing analysis and drills. So, just like we were talking earlier, I really built this thing out in mind with, like, I want somebody to be able to get in here and be able to follow a very easy journey to get better and to really cut their scores down. And everything that they need is in there based on where they are in the journey, whether that's putting, whether it's how to practice. I have a really, really awesome practice system that will simplify and clarify things for people. My 10x Better Swing program's in there, which is essentially, I call it the only three things, the only three secrets to a wildly consistent swing, which is, again, we go through how to stand, how to grip it, how to pivot, and then more importantly, I have what I call the swing decoder, which helps people understand how to look at their swing and understand it, how to read ball flight, understand exactly what they need to do. But it's just getting players organized and going, here's my couple keys, here's how I practice it, and here's how I advance it on the course.
Pro, the information was, fantastic. And, I can personally attest, if you are listening to the podcast, that, Kyle will make you a better player. We trust him at sub 70. It's if you work with him, he's a hell of a teacher, and you are a hell of a teacher. And we wouldn't ever have anybody on that we did not fully believe in their beliefs, and you're at the top of that list, because I know guys who have worked with you, and it's always one of those deals where it's like, does the player get better? And yes, the players who work with you get better. So anyone, check out the stuff, and you will legitimately become a better golfer, working with Kyle here. Is there a website again for an easy spot for them to start off with to find you?
Yeah. Well, I'm humbled, man. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, and by the way, you don't pay me to say this. Right. So right. So there's no financial thing that you and I have together, anything like that. I mean, we care about our customers at sub 70, and hopefully we handle the club side, but we trust anybody working with you.
Well, you definitely do that, and I mean, I will say to anybody, I mean, I've fully embraced, and I'm playing everything sub 70, and I tell everybody too. I mean, out of all of it, I don't know if it's what you guys like want to be known for, but your putters are insane. Like, I mean, I have a Scotty Cameron that I never thought I would put away, and I was just going to test yours out. And I mean, I've benched the Cameron for years, and within a day, I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, thank you. Yes, the putter market for us is growing. It's we've carved out a nice little niche with that. But it's the same thing on your side with us, right? We don't pay you to play the clubs either. So this is it's one of these things where hopefully people work with sub 70, and we're not trying to make this an infomercial or anything, but we really care about the clients and that the equipment works, and we know if one of our customers who listens to the podcast works with you, they're going to get the same of what we do on the golf club side. And I know how much you care about your students and how good and talented you are at what you do. So I'm totally comfortable saying that. And if they work with you, they'll be better for it.
I appreciate that so much. In terms of the website, so to get to the beta membership right now, the website is membership.10xbettergolf.com. And depending on when you release this, it might be fully up on 10xbettergolf.com. But either way, they'll be able to find it in either one. But if they want to go directly to the beta, which is very special pricing, like for my first tier of it, it's only $9 a month. People can get access to all of my stuff, the journey, and then the premium is $37 a month. And this is all going to go up when the program's fully launched. So if anybody wants to get in that beta program at that pricing, I mean, they're grandfathered in for as long as they want to stay in there with me. I'd love to have anybody. I mean, the more people I can have, just kind of testing and giving feedback, just to make it the best program it can be. And the goal, like I said, is truly to get people in there and be able to follow easy steps and just have somebody basically saying, like, here's what you do to get better and to lower your scores, instead of just bombarding people with, huge libraries of videos and saying, go figure it out type thing. So
is there an email address if they're in the Chattanooga area and they want a personal lesson with you?
Yeah, man. It's Kiel, Kiel, at 10xbettergolf.com.
Perfect. Okay, and they can reach out to you from that on that kind of stuff as well. Well, let's do it again. There's always something on tour to talk about, and we're all of us in this crazy game are trying to get better. So there's always interesting topics to talk about, and I've always enjoyed the conversations with you. So thank you for coming on today, Pro. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Same to you.